Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today you're checking out an updated Stamina Sorcerer PvP build for the Scalebreaker DLC. This is actually the first Stamina build that I've played this patch, and while I think Stamina builds are in a little bit rougher spot this time because of how much dot pressure there is in the meta at the moment, I actually think Stamina Sorcerer is probably one of your best bets for both survivability, speed, healing, health recovery. Stamina Sorcerer can do all of it, really helping you stay alive in this really dot-focused meta right now. Not to mention we have great damage, great sustain, and it's just a lot of fun to play the build. So I thought I would share it with all of you today. As usual, we'll go over the stats, the gear, the skills, champion points, and more coming up next. Alright everybody, back on our Stam Sorc PvP build. We'll jump into the stats here. Usual disclaimer though, that I'm not fully min-maxed on this build yet. Missing a few gear traits. I don't have my Undaunted maxed out, but here's what you can basically expect on the build. Sitting at 10k max magicka, 26k maximum health, 31k max stamina, and our health recovery actually goes up. About 3,000 health recovery, 1,800 stamina recovery, 3,400 weapon damage with our Berserker glyph. That will be close to 4k, 35% weapon critical. And then our resistances do go up even further with one of our sets. When that procs will be close to 30,000 physical and spell resistance and 2.4k crit resistance. Now I do have all of my points here in stamina. For the Mundus on this build, I've chosen the Steed Mundus. This is for the extra movement speed as well as the health recovery. You can see we're stacking health recovery on this build. And the movement speed just goes really good on your Stamina Sorcerer, making you even faster. For our buff food, we're using the Lava Foot Soup and Saltress. This is a very nice max stamina and stamina recovery food. You can see even without a health bonus, our health is super high because of the sets that we're running on this build. So you don't need any health on your food buff. This gives us just the stamina and the stamina recovery that we need here. On our potions, very important. We want to make use of the Essence of Weapon Crit. This is because we don't have a weapon crit buff from our skills. So this is going to give us our 10% weapon crit, plus a nice little burst heal and extra health recovery, which again, stacking health recovery is going to be really good in this patch. And then it also gives us major endurance, which is stamina and stamina recovery. So definitely pick these up. If you only have tripods, that will work in a pinch, but I definitely recommend this for the extra weapon crit. Now, as far as our race, two really good options for race here. First option I recommend is Orc. That's because you get 2,000 max stamina, you get the extra 1,000 max health, you get some healing, and you get the 258 weapon damage and the sprint speed and reduced sprint cost, which all of this put together on a Stamina Sorcerer is very good for an offensive Stamina Sorcerer build. And if you want something more defensive this patch, definitely think about checking out the Nord. The Nord gives you an extra 4k spell and physical resist, which with our set is going to equate to even more health recovery. So the Nord is a very good option for a defensive choice this patch as well. Switching over to our gear sets next, let's take a look at those. Starting off with our weapons, we've got the Elysian Order set. Running this on our front bar, we've got a really nice bunch of physical and spell resistance and health for the 2, 3, and 4 pieces, so very defensive set. And then for the 5 piece, this increases your health recovery by 1% of your sum total physical and spell resistance. So basically, the more resistances you have total, the more health bonus you're going to get. Right now, unbuffed, I have 357. With our armor buff, you'll see it goes up to 462. And then with our other defensive set, once that procs, will be over 600 health recovery from the set. So it is very defensive. I like the extra bonuses that it provides. And again, health recovery, we're stacking. Stamina Sorcerer also has some health recovery passives that make it even better to stack those recoveries on a Stamina Sorcerer. So I just felt like it was a really good defensive set this patch to help you stay alive and kind of roll off some of that dot pressure that we're going to be getting no matter what. So I am using this on the front bar. Nirnhond Maul is going to be very good in no CP, especially because you get the extra physical penetration by running a Maul. If you don't have that, you can also use a sword or an axe for the bleed, kind of up to you and what you prefer there. Let's see, I am using the weapon damage enchant here on the front bar. Fully buffed, that's going to be an extra 400, 450 weapon damage here every time that procs. And then for our back bar, just using dual weld on the back bar with a poison. Now, as far as the weapons, you could use maces, you could use daggers, you could use dagger mace, whatever you prefer there. Daggers will obviously give you more crit, which will be very nice on the Stamina Sorcerer, make your heals a little bit more reliable. Maces will give you more penetration. So think about what you need there. And then I definitely recommend running poisons on the back bar. What I've got right now is the Escapist Poison. This is really nice because it's going to proc a root on our target, which makes it easier to land Dizzy Swing and more of our burst combo on the target when that procs. This also gives us the Unstoppable buff for 4 seconds. So that means we're immune to CCs, which is also really nice this patch. You can also run double dot poisons here on the back bar if you want. Those will give you some increased damage as well. So again, Elysian weapons, and then we're running the chest here, heavy. This is a heavy armor set, by the way. It's going to be a heavy armor build, 5 heavy and 2 medium. And I believe I'm also running the legs here and the boots. Impenetrable will be your best trait. You can run a couple well-fitted like I have here. This will be really good, especially if you're running in no CP and Battlegrounds. For our next 5-piece set, let's talk about 7th Legion. 7th Legion got changed quite significantly in the Scalebreaker DLC. We can see the initial bonuses are still pretty much the same. You got weapon damage, health recovery, weapon crit, but then the 5-piece, they changed the way that this procs. So now, the way that this procs is when you cast an ability that increases either physical or spell resist, you get about 350 weapon damage and the same amount of health recovery for 10 seconds, and this effect can occur every 10 seconds. So basically, anytime you cast an armor buff, you're going to get this extra weapon damage and health recovery. So it's pretty different than how it was in the past. I don't think it's good on all classes. I think some classes are definitely better than others for this set now. I think probably the top 2 would be a Stamina Templar, because they have their rune, which is very cheap to cast. And then another one would be Stamina Sorcerer, because you have Hurricane, which is also pretty cheap to cast. So let me show you how it looks when we proc Hurricane on the back bar. You can see you get this sort of fiery effect on your chest, and that's your 10-second 7th Legion buff. Now, just one thing that you'll have to get used to is you cannot recast this to refresh the duration. You actually have to wait the full 10 seconds before you can cast it again. You can see if I try to cast it again, it does not refresh, but once it falls off, then I can actually cast it. So the reason why I picked this for the Stam Sorc is, again, really good class for stacking health recovery. This gives us an extra 350 health recovery and also gives us a health recovery on the 3-piece. And then it also gives us the 350 weapon damage, the 2-piece weapon damage, and the weapon crit. Basically everything we need on this build. So it's very, very good. And I like the control of it. You can proc this anytime you need by just casting Hurricane. So I'm going to be running that on the jewelry and 2 pieces on the body. Now this jewelry does come in healthy, which is not ideal for this build. You can trait change a few of these. I would definitely recommend 2 to 3 infused traits with your weapon damage enchant. That's going to get you very close to 5k weapon damage if you trait change all of these to infused. You really don't need the extra health. As you saw, we were already over 26k health, so dropping a few of these traits for infused is not going to hurt your health very much at all. So think about doing that if you have the transmute stones. And if you don't have it, that's okay. The extra health is not a bad trait to have right now in PvP. So we've got 7th Legion, Elysian, and then for our monster helm, 2 options here that you want to think about. Now for no CP and Battlegrounds, what I really recommend now is going to be Bloodspawn. Bloodspawn gives us a nice extra bit of stamina recovery, and then when we take damage, we have a 6% chance to get ultimate back and over 6k physical and spell resistance. So when this procs, you'll be close to 30,000 physical and spell resist, which is really nice. But also remember that when we're running Elysian, that physical and spell resistance is going to turn into health recovery. So anytime Bloodspawn procs, I think that's over like 150 extra health recovery that gets added on top with all of our other buffs. So there's a nice synergy there running Alessian with Bloodspawn. Now the other option you have this patch I think that's pretty good is going to be to run Troll King instead. Troll King gives you the healing done, which is always very nice, and then this procs even more health recovery, about 1500 extra health recovery for 10 seconds. Now the reason why I don't like running this as much in no CP is that you have to be below 50% health, and that can be dangerous in a Battlegrounds match. Getting your health that low is generally something that you don't want to do. You want to use the mobility and the speed of the Sorcerer to just avoid taking damage entirely. So I don't think it's going to be as good in Battlegrounds and no CP, but if you're running in a Champion Points campaign, then I think you'll have the extra health, you'll have the extra tankiness, where you can add this on and you'll get very high regen, between 4 and 5k health recovery there if you're running Troll King. So those are my two favorite options there for the Monster Helm. Now in terms of other ways you can run this build, if you have access to the Masters or Arena weapons, there's actually some other ways you can switch up the build if you want. Because the way 7th Legion works is you only really need this on a back bar or a front bar to proc the 7th Legion set. Whatever bar your Hurricane on is going to proc that. So you could, for example, switch your weapons to 7th Legion, have 7th Legion on your back bar to proc Hurricane, and then that would actually free up your front bar. So you could run the Asylum 2H for Executioner, for example. The other way you could run that is you could put Hurricane on your front bar, run 7th Legion on the front bar, and then run Masters dual wield, or even the Black Rose dual wield for that major protection buff. So there's a lot of ways you can mix up this build with your weapons if you have access to those Masters level sets. Let's jump into the skills next, starting with our front bar, which is our two-hander, and we've got Executioner first up. This is our Execute ability, which did actually get buffed in the Scalebreaker DLC. So previously on my Stam Sorc, I used to run Reverse Slice for the bonus splash damage, but here this is now 400% bonus damage at max for your Executioner. So I think it's a pretty juicy execute this patch to run. Most of our other abilities are single target focus, so I think it's worth it in this patch. You can still run Reverse Slice if you want, but I like the extra damage that Executioner has now. Next up is Streak. This effect cannot be blocked anymore, which is very good. So it does an AoE stun, and also a decent bit of shock damage, which actually scales with our stamina and weapon damage now, which is pretty good. But I use this more as a defensive skill. If I have too many people crowding around me, then I can hit 1 or 2 streaks, get some distance, get some line of sight, reset my buffs, and do what I need to do. But you can use it both offensively and defensively. Keep that in mind. Next up, Dark Deal. This is a very good tool for stamina sustain and for healing. You can see it gives us a pretty juicy burst heal, and then stamina back instantly and stamina back over 20 seconds. So it's very good. Keep in mind it does still have a cast time. You can still be interrupted when you're casting Dark Deal. So you want to make sure that you have some space first. Maybe go around a corner first before you use this. But it is a very nice little mini burst heal and sustain. Primary damage on this build is going to be Dizzy Swing. Dizzy Swing has been improving a little bit here and there each patch, which I'm glad to see. The cast time, for example, did go down under a second, which is nice. It feels pretty good now in PvP, as long as the lag isn't too bad. It feels pretty good to weave and cast with your other abilities. And the damage has been going up a little bit as well. It's not where it used to be, but it's still pretty decent, especially if you can manage to land a crit. Dizzy Swing, it's very good. Now Bound Armaments is next, and this is more like a flex spot, I would say, for the build. For no CP and Battlegrounds, I like Bound Armaments because it's going to keep my stamina pool pretty decent, get that 8% extra stamina, and then light attack damage is increased. The other really important reason to run Bound Armaments on your front bar is for the Daedric Summoning passive. Daedric Protection, this gives us 20% health and stamina recovery for any of those abilities that we have slotted. The only one that we have on our front bar is going to be Bound Armaments. So again, stacking health recovery on the Stamina Sorcerer, very effective. And this is going to give us 20% buff to that, which is huge. Now, yes, I am not running forward momentum on this build, and I haven't found it too necessary to have forward momentum this patch. Snares have been going down for the last few patches, and I find myself with the amount of speed that I have on this build not really being too affected by it. But if you feel like you need that, you can put forward momentum in this slot instead. You could put maybe Dark Deal on your back bar and put bound armaments there. But since forward momentum doesn't have the heal, over time anymore to help you proc things like Troll King, I feel like the usefulness of this skill has really gone down this patch. Remember, you can also use those immovability poisons on the back bar and get a similar effect when you're poison procs. So keep that in mind too. Ultimate here, you have two choices really. You can use Onslaught. I still like Dawnbreaker of Smiting though for the extra weapon damage passively. And then for the stun, it does have a cast time now, so that takes a little bit of getting used to. You can't swap, cancel, or block cancel this as quick as you used to, but still does great AoE damage, still has the stun, still has the damage over time, so very strong ultimate still. Backbar, I'm using Rending Slashes for an initial dot, and really for the snare. You can use the healing morph of this if you want for extra healing, but I like the snare here at the bottom. And basically, this is how you can open up a fight. Hit your target with Rending Slashes, maybe heavy attack into Rending Slashes, and then immediately bar swap. You'll have 4 seconds of a snared enemy. It's going to help you land your Dizzy Swing, Dawnbreaker, Executioner combo a little bit easier. So I do like opening up with that Rending Slashes. Next up, Quick Cloak. This is going to be our Major Expedition. Also Major Evasion, which is very important still. That's our reducing damage from area attacks by 25%. Keep in mind that this did get changed where the Major Evasion now lasts just as long as the ability. So it's not a longer duration. I think it was something like 20 seconds of Major Evasion in the past. It's only 12 seconds now, so you're going to have to recast this a bit more frequently. But you'll want to do that anyways to maintain the dot, because the dot will also proc your poison. This skill, combined with our speed buff from Hurricane, combined with being an Orc, combined with the Steed Mundus, we are very, very fast on this build, very hard to catch, and very easy to escape if you need to. So make sure you just keep that in mind for sort of a burst of speed on your back bar. Hit Quick Cloak, and that will get you out of trouble very quickly. Resolving Vigor is just our heal over time. It's now 4 seconds instead of 5 seconds, so keep that in mind in the Scalebreaker DLC. You do need to cast this more often. I feel like the healing is not as strong as it's been in the past, but again, we're making up for that in this build by stacking lots and lots of health recovery. Now, speaking of healing, we do have Crit Surge on the back bar. This is giving us our weapon damage buff, Major Brutality for 33 seconds, and giving us about 3.5k health every 1 second, as long as we're doing damage and doing crit damage specifically. So make sure this is up 100% of the time, no exceptions. This is what's going to keep you alive for sure. And then Hurricane, which is just the staple skill of the Stamina Sorcerer. Does physical damage and AoE every 1 second. Great for pulling enemies out of stealth, out of cloak. And it also gives you that Major Ward and Major Resolve, which increases our physical and spell resistance. And then that 10% movement speed again. We have very good movement speed, stacking lots of sources of expedition. Keep in mind too that this is proccing 7th Legion on the build, so you'll want to cast it about every 10 seconds or so, making sure you don't cast it earlier than that, because if you do cast it earlier, it will not proc 7th Legion. Now for your back bar, the Greater Storm Atronach is pretty nice, especially if you're fighting outnumbered. This gives you just a huge Atronach on the field that you can kind of kite around and go underneath to avoid damage, so it's very good for that. It does good damage itself, but also remember that passive that we talked about for Daedric Summoning, Daedric Protection. As long as you have one of those abilities slotted, you'll get the 20% health recovery and stamina recovery, and we really want that on our back bar as well, and there's no room to run bound armaments here, so the way I'm getting that is just from the Greater Storm Atronach as the ultimate. So while we're here, let's talk about passives very quickly. Starting with class passives, what you need here. You can pick up everything in Dark Magic. This reduces, Unholy Knowledge reduces your costs by 6%, which is nice. Blood Magic you actually don't need. You can save 2 skill points here for Stamina Sorcerer right now. Persistence gives a nice bit of cost reduction, but you'll need to block an attack to proc that. And then Exploitation is more of a group buff, but it's nice to pick that up as well. In Daedric Summoning, you can pick all of these up, but really the most important two here, and just the ones that I have slotted right now, is Power Stone. So that's going to reduce our ultimate costs by 15%, which is huge. And then we talked about Daedric Protection a lot already. Make sure you pick that up. Storm Calling is really good, though. You want to get all of these. So 10% Magicka Recovery from the Capacitor passive. Energize gives us extra physical and shock damage. Amplitude increases our damage done. And then Expert Mage gives us actually bonus weapon damage, 6% here on the front bar, which is actually pretty nice. This is another reason why it's a good choice to run more class abilities on the front bar. That's why we got Dark Deal, Streak, and Bound Armor up front. For weapon passives, you want everything in two-handed, everything in your dual-wield skill line as well. We are running 5 heavy and 2 medium, but you can still get some bonuses from medium here. Dexterity gives you weapon critical, which is very important on the Stamina Sorcerer. Windwalker gives you stamina recovery and stamina cost reduction. You don't need sneak, you don't need agility either because we don't have enough medium armor pieces, but you can pick up athletics. This increases your movement speed while sprinting and then reduces roll cost, which is also very good on a heavy armor build. Obviously pick up all of these. This is our very tanky health survivability passives, very good. Fighters Guild, you want to pick up these as well if you're running Dawnbreaker of Smiting on the front bar. If you're running Onslaught, then you don't need all of these, but you do want the Banish the Wicked passive at least, which gives you 9 ultimate when killing undead or werewolves. Undaunted, definitely pick those up if you have access to those. Under Assault, Combat Frenzy gives you 20 ultimate whenever you kill a player. That's very good. Always pick up your racial skills, of course, and then Alchemy, very important. Medicinal use gives you that extended potion duration. Make sure you pick that up too. Last but not least, let's jump into champion points. Now you can play this in no CP as well, and we talked about the gear sets and things you can adjust for Battlegrounds. But if you're in a champion point campaign, I would recommend something similar to this. So 40 into Warlord for that break free, 33 into Sprinter, 32 in Tenacity because you can sustain with heavy attacks on the Stamina Sorcerer, 27 Arcanist, 64 Mooncalf, 32 into Healthy because health recovery, why not? 23 Shadow Ward, 18 into Tumbling. In the blue tree, 19 into Blessed, 16 into Physical Weapon Expert, 61 into Master at Arms, 11 Shattering Blows, 44 into Thaumaturge, 23 Precise Strikes, 47 Piercing, 49 into Mighty. In the red tree, 61 Ironclad, 62 into Resistant, 43 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 34 Thick-Skinned, and 27 into Quick Recovery. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this build update for the Stamina Sorcerer PvP build in the Scalebreaker DLC. If you guys enjoyed the video, as always, don't forget to crush that like button. It really helps out the channel. Leave a comment below as well. If you play Stam Sorc or any stamina class, actually this patch, I'd be interested in hearing what you think and what builds you're running. And if you're new here to the channel, don't forget to hit that juicy subscribe button for more ESO videos in the very near future. I have some more builds coming out very soon, so keep an eye out for those. And until then, thanks again, everybody, for watching. I appreciate all of you very much, and I'll see you around in the next video.
This is not so good.